Tired of Frankenstacks and Martech bloat? Your entire marketing engine can now run seamlessly from a single unified platform. Tofu is an AI-powered solution designed specifically for B2B marketing teams. From ABM and outbound prospecting to lifecycle marketing and events, Tofu helps create, execute, and measure integrated campaigns 8 times faster. With Tofu, your content won't just be on brand, it will follow your templates, format, and tone. Tofu helps your marketing team do more with less. With autopilot campaigns and customizable templates, you can continually launch high-impact cross-channel campaigns again and again. To learn more, visit TofuHQ.com. So today we are joined by Elaine Zelby, who is the co-founder and CRO at TofuHQ. Elaine, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Anthony.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm sure our audience are really going to benefit from this discussion. But before we dive into the kind of meat of our discussion today, I'm sure people would just love to know a little bit more about you, your kind of journey to your current position, and a little bit more about your organization and what you do.
I always joke that I have one of the most random backgrounds of anybody you'll ever meet. I started my career, my life as a biomechanical engineer, thinking I was going to go do medical devices. Very quickly realized how painfully slow that world is, and I'm quite impatient. So ended up joining the world of startups as one of the first employees of an early enterprise software company. And that was my first introduction also to go to market. I'd never had any experience with that whatsoever, but I'm very extroverted. I love people, and I really liked being that connective tissue between the market and then the product and engineering teams. And that felt like a really good fit for me. So I spent 5 years building out all the go-to-market teams with that startup. After that, I got to Slack when they were launching their enterprise product to lead their enterprise marketing. And I always knew I wanted to start a company, but I had been advising a bunch of startups through VCs that I had gotten to know. And through that, it actually pulled me into venture capital. So I spent 5 years as a partner at a VC firm called Signalfire that was investing at the intersection of AI and applications. So for me, it was a great way for me to really get to see the entire lay of the land when it came to AI and its evolution. And I think the things that I saw happening over time were twofold. The first one was I would see all of these CROs and CMOs tell me the same thing over and over again. Too many tools. We have 17 tools and we're a Series A company. We have 37 tools and we're Series B. People wanted fewer tools that did more, and they wanted to have that integrated and bundled together. So I forget who said it, but there's a famous phrase of there's only 2 cycles, bundling and unbundling. And we had a decade plus of unbundling. It was clear to me that we were on the precipice of a rebundling phase. And the second thing was I was following the generative AI space in general. Before I even joined the venture capital firm, in 2018, I built my first Gen AI product called SoundSpot that could turn any blog into a podcast. So it could take your corporate blog, you could select one of 6 voices, and it would automatically generate an entire podcast for you. That was laughable if you go back and look at it now, but today that technology has evolved a lot. So I followed it over time and saw that it was good enough then. And the big swing to me was somebody needs to build the unified single platform. So bundle all of the top of funnel technologies, use generative AI at its core to help automate as much as you can, and then act as that force multiplier for everyone on the marketing and sales team. So that's really what we're trying to build, is that unified go-to-market engine, leveraging generative AI, but helping teams do more with less, scale their campaigns, accelerate time to market, and really just generate high quality content across channels.
That's so impressive. You know what I love? I love how, the ideas that you're describing here, they stem from things that you were hearing on the ground, like real pain points that people were having. I mean, one of the main reasons I think that a lot of startups still fail is that like they kind of try and craft something or a whole product out of like an idea that kind of sounds cool in their head, but like they don't actually think about like, but do people want it, right? Do people actually need it? Is this actually addressing a real pain point? It's like the kind of Google Glass thing all over again. I think a little bit is what I'm thinking of. Like, I'm thinking of like something that looks really cool, but it's like, yeah, but do people need this? That is so much more powerful, isn't it? And I think with all of the technological developments and progression, I still think that's like the major hurdle that people fall over a lot of the time, is just not actually addressing like real market needs, real things that people really need, and things that are their stresses in both their professional and their personal lives.
Yes. And I think it was great for me and my co-founders because they're both PhDs in computer science, have spent over a decade working on AI, machine learning, large language models before they were even called that. So they understood very deeply where the technology was and where it was going and how to go and best leverage it for what it could do today. And I think I brought some of that industry and domain experience, and combined, it was kind of the perfect storm of, okay, we have all the pieces, let's go and now put it together.
I love it. I love it. The synergy of creativity and technological prowess. It's what you want, isn't it? It's perfect. Yeah, great.
Indeed.
So yeah, let's go back then, because this is one of the main topics of our discussion today, which is tech stack bloating, or as I've heard it mentioned before, Frankenstacks.
I love that.
I love that so much. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how did that end up happening? Because if it's such a common complaint, how do marketing leaders end up in a position where they end up with these monstrous unwieldy tech stacks? How does this happen, and what are the consequences? Yeah.
What's really interesting is if you look at the evolution of marketing used to be brand and advertising. That was marketing. It was much more qualitative, what some people might call fluffy. And it has over time gotten way more data-driven, way more quantitative and revenue focused. And with that, everybody wanted a tool to really help them do their job and their function extremely well. So we saw all of these point solutions pop up. So every marketer, if you think about marketing, it's one of the unique business units within a company where every person tends to own a channel. And that channel tends to be run by specific tools that don't actually talk to any of the other tools. So you have people that are doing PPC or paid digital. You have people focused on SEO, email marketing, webinars, you name it, content. All of these people together make up your entire marketing team. And people say they want to do integrated campaigns, yet everyone is on their own channel with their own tools in their own little silos. And I think part of what happened was we were told to buy the best thing that focuses on your exact problem. So people bought point solutions. There was one tool that was so focused on just helping you automate your paid digital across different channels. There was one tool that was just promising to help you figure out keywords for SEO and help you write blog posts and all of that. You have your marketing automation system like HubSpot or Marketo to send out emails. And the consequences of this are now, when you're a data-driven team, you have these data silos. You have inconsistent messaging. You have people who are supposed to be coordinated who are completely uncoordinated. And now we've created this whole problem that involved RevOps. That term was not around even 5-7 years ago. No. Now we have RevOps teams that have to glue and duct tape all of these different systems together. You have 1,000,001 tools trying to sell you different dashboarding solutions and different attribution solutions because we don't have a single place to see all of this. So I think there's been a little bit of blowback from that now. And I think it's interesting. Generative AI is almost making the problem a bit worse in the short term, in that it is very easy for people to spin up these flashy point solutions that just do one thing. So we just do landing pages. We just do AI SDR emails. We just do your ads using generative AI. So now I'm seeing another small wave of people testing. I would say it's less implementing, more testing these range of point solutions that do one tiny, tiny, tiny thing using generative AI. And I think some of them are good and some of them are not quite there yet, just depending on what you're trying to accomplish. But I think that we're already starting to see that blowback happen again of like, wait, this is not what we wanted. We don't want to increase our Frankenstack. We actually wanted to go and simplify it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I mean, and I think part of the problem as well has also come from like cultural factors. I think a little bit as well. I feel like, it's so much more common now, isn't it, for teams to be scattered? All over. I think we've seen like a bit of a post-COVID working revolution as well in terms of the way people work across different time zones, different regions, and things like that. And I feel like it's technology. A lot of technological solutions have come in to try and help people, to try and stay organized and try and stay synchronized. But it's interesting that sometimes those things, I think, can complicate the thing a lot more, than it needs to. It's one of those strange situations, I think, that I've seen personally as well.
I agree. And I think that's a challenge of modern work. This is also where I feel like automation in the sense of coordination is smart. I think being able to use things where it's passing information automatically to the next person when you're asynchronous, that to me feels like a very good use of technology and automation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think anything like to sort of improve efficiency so that people have more space to strategize and think is really like, I think a lot of people have agreed that is really where AI should be. That should be its kind of key use case. And there's always a big temptation, isn't there, to misuse it, because it can do amazing things. Like large language models obviously can spin out like whole ads for you and things like that, but you really don't want to be using it in that way. You want to be using it in a way that it kind of triggers your creativity and maybe takes off some of the more kind of admin type stuff that you're doing. And also I think it's also I think AI is great at interpreting data. Obviously really, really good at it. But then the thing is, you still have to interpret that once it's done it. Once it's analyzed data, you still have to be able to draw conclusions about what's happening and, what that says, the story that it tells. I think, you mentioned earlier that there was, this term RevOps, and people, I've heard a lot about, I think you're really hitting at something that's very important and resonating with a lot of people right now, because so many CMOs, so many marketing leaders have said to me, we're just seeing, the marketing leadership role transition into one that's so kind of revenue focused and so data focused. And I think maybe the solution with tools like yours is that kind of simplify that as much as possible so that we can still retain the kind of human element of marketing, right? I was wondering, like, I didn't actually plan to ask this, but it's maybe a little bit of a bonus. How do you see that happening? How do you think we can kind of utilize the tools that we have to kind of, I guess, balance out the kind of technological development and kind of maintain the key kind of creative side of marketing and the storytelling element of it?
I always tell people that the humans are 100% still responsible for the strategic and the creative. The creative is things like when it comes to marketing, your core messaging and positioning. It's your brand identity. It's your strategic stuff, your strategy around what channels are we going to be using and why? Who is our ICP? Sure, data can help inform that, but it's not going to define your strategy. It's not going to tell you, hey, we're going to go do these micro campaigns, one-to-one ABM focused on these 3 cohorts because of X, right? It will give you some insights as to one of our customers, really fun story. They said it took them so much longer than it should have to figure out that financial services companies had 3x ACVs. That aha moment that for them triggered this whole need to go, okay, now we're going to go do an ABM campaign targeted the top 200 financial services companies within our ICP. Now, that insight informs the strategy, right? Now, data can help, AI can help with that insight. That strategy then can go and get executed in a tool like Tofu. And I think that the pieces, to kind of also comment on, you were saying ads, right? Like, should AI go and just build all of your ads? Well, here's the pieces that people hate. So for every white paper, ebook, guide, report that you create, you might have to do 27 ad variations. You might have some ads on LinkedIn, some ads on Meta, some ads on Instagram. You might have like 10 headlines that you have to do for Google. Maybe you have 20 descriptions that you have to write. Now, having to do that manually is not fun. How about doing all of the different variations of sizes for every single ad? Like, that is not a creative person's dream job. Now, we can take that stuff off of their plate, but should AI be writing that core white paper? Probably not. That is an area where it still should be written by a human. It still should be thoughtful. It should be researched, all of that. And so, where AI can jump in is giving you that single pane to coordinate the teams for each one of their different responsibilities within an integrated campaign. It's excellent at repurposing content. So taking that white paper and turning it into blog content, social content, ad variations, an email sequence nurturing people who fill out the form online. All of that thing, those things, super low hanging fruit that human doesn't really want to do anyways. So I think in that sense, that's a really great use of the technology. Now, where I think I'm seeing people trying to offload the creative is it should not be coming up with your core messaging. Do you want to use it as a thought partner? Great. Do you want to actually offload your entire brain? No, like that is not going to be helpful. Then everyone is going to just revert to the mean. It's going to be lowest common denominator. And that's just going to produce crap. There's the whole adage of garbage in and garbage out. And that is very true when it comes to AI. I'm sure everyone has had the experience of trying to use ChatGPT to do something, whether it's write me a blog post about this. You're giving it incomplete information and it's going to give you the most generic response possible. And so I think that's where we really still need people to do the core work and then offload everything else. The one other area too that I think people don't pay enough attention to is the core idea of integrated campaigns or integrated marketing has been around for a very long time. Now, I have had hundreds of conversations with CMOs. And when you ask people about this, I get the same look and the same response. It's an embarrassed look. And the response is something like, oh, yeah, we're really working on that. We're not great at it. We need to improve it. And it's a goal for everyone. And I think now, this is something where we can create cohesive experiences. And I think at the end of the day, what we as marketers need to do is put the user, put our customer, put our prospect at the center and think about what is the best experience for that person, not what is the best experience for our team. Checkbox marketing, saying we need to write 10 blog posts this month. We need to do 2 white papers. Why? In service of what? So if you start thinking about the user journey, I'll give you a great example. Let's just take ads as a perfect example since we mentioned that before. If I'm doing a Google search and search for something, and let's say ABM, I search for ABM, and all of a sudden I see an ad that was, or maybe it's like best ways to do one-to-one ABM. We'll do something specific. I see an ad that says literally like, here are 10 best ways to do one-to-one ABM. I click that ad. The experience I have post-click should follow my entire thread. The landing page should be about one-to-one ABM. The email follow-up I get should be about one-to-one ABM. Everything should follow that. And today it doesn't because we don't put the user at the center. And so I think being thoughtful around, okay, let's take a step back. Let's create a strategy around how we put our users at the center. And then we use tools and technology to go and make it happen.
So you think that sometimes, do you think that, going back to what we were talking about, these kind of these bloated tech stacks, do you think sometimes that's the result of companies responding to what they feel they need rather than actually thinking about the customer specifically?
Absolutely. And I think the term checkbox marketing has come into play a lot, but it's very true. A lot of people, if you ask them, what are your goals this year, or what are your team focused on? What are the outputs that people are working on? You'll just see a list of things that people think they should do. Now, if you ask them the why, one of our customers is doing 130 plus events a year. Now, they've probably thought about why are they doing that? Well, maybe it's because that's their number one lead driver. Now, do they also need to go and do 17 other channels? Maybe not. Maybe that is the focus. So let's put all of our efforts behind that. Let's make our events the best events. Let's go and make sure that those people have the most amazing experience before, during, after. But what I see a lot of times is people just scattershot all kinds of channels and all kinds of campaigns because they haven't put a strategy together focused on who their user is.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's really interesting, it goes back to what I was talking about before, almost about like getting back to like the core of marketing, like the kind of core principles, which I think are still true. Where you said that people have been trying to do integrated marketing forever. Really, it's not a new thing. And it's like a little bit what I was talking about before, saying, one of the main reasons why a lot of people still fail is they're not creating an idea that is, resonating with people, that's really backed by like kind of user research into who your customers are going to be. And I think you're kind of, in a way, you're saying a similar thing here, is that like, we should be using these tools to put the customer at the center and choosing tools that are going to do that are going to help us facilitate that, right? And I wonder if like these tools, I think, have the capacity to do that. But if you get it wrong, it can just create a whole other headache for you, right? A whole load of other headaches.
Well, I'm sure you've seen some of these insanely written emails that are just so bad and so clearly AI written. And they're in the vein of personalized. So they're trying to be extremely personalized to you, but it almost comes off worse than had they not been personalized at all. I mean, I've gotten emails that are like, "Hi, Miss Elaine Zelby, as the co-founder and CRO of Tofu." Like, it's just, they're horrible. And a friend of mine, he is from New York and he lives now in Boston, and he could not care less about sports, but because the AI decided that anyone in Boston should like I'm not a sports person either, whatever the baseball team is in Boston, sent him this whole note around like, "How about that game?" or whatever. And this guy was like, it was so off that it just made me hate this company. And so I think this is areas where it could go wrong. There's a thoughtful way to do personalization, and then there's an unthoughtful way. And I think most people today are just letting these tools run free, and running free for them means taking in the data points that are publicly available and then slotting them in to the places that it wants, as opposed to being extremely thoughtful about, why am I even reaching out right now? Did this person do something? Was there a trigger event that made it such that they have given me not only permission, but a reason to reach out? And I think that's the thing I'm most excited about, is being able to, using AI, be extremely thoughtful about the when, the what, and the who. So did somebody take an action? Maybe they were on our website, then they downloaded an ebook, and then, they came to the request demo page, but didn't actually request a demo. That's some really interesting signals that I should probably listen to, but also be thoughtful about, what do I then send them? Well, maybe that ebook was about topic X. The outreach that I have should be timely. It should be on subject. So it should be about whatever that topic was. And then it should be personalized in a thoughtful way, right? It shouldn't be focused on their title. It should be focused on, what was their intent? What were they looking at? What were they clearly investigating? And I think AI is good at collecting this data and signals. It's just being thoughtful around, how do we pull them in? How do we put them in a clean way, which I think is actually potentially the biggest challenge of ingesting these signals or intent in a somewhat organized fashion, and then letting tools use them in ways to actually go and craft this type of outreach.
Yeah, I love it. Thoughtful implementation of technology, I think, is an overarching theme here, and thoughtfulness in general, actually. So, I mean, let's make it super practical then. Like if people like, let's say, then I'm sure there are tons of organizations who are in the situation where they're just like, our tech stack is insane. But I imagine like actually starting to simplify that, especially when a lot of your kind of processes, a lot of your team are kind of tied up in it. How do you actually go about this? Like, what are the steps you need to take? First steps to actually address this?
Part of it is a mindset shift, and part of it is also a workflow change, which is hard for people. Humans are creatures of habit. We don't like changing our patterns. And I think that alone is potentially the biggest challenge of AI adoption in general, even just ChatGPT. I'll even take it from my personal perspective. This is a funny, real story. I'm in this stuff day in and day out, and have been for years. Yet a couple weeks ago, we had gotten a list of people that had attended a virtual event where we were there, and there was like 800 people that had registered. Now, I would say maybe 1 out of 10 was actually relevant to us. And so I was trying to use filters in Excel to go and figure out who our ICP was and filter them out. And I spent maybe 15 minutes, trying to go and build these filters. And all of a sudden I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this in Excel? This is exactly what AI is exceptional at. So I stuck that in to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and said, here's my ICP. Here's this list. Create a table of just the people that fit this description. Took 20 seconds, right? That is the mindset shift that we all have to get in to do that. Now, you ask the question around, okay, you have these processes, you have people really ingrained in their tools, you have people in these silos. I think a lot of it has to come top down. We've seen among our customer base, there is a range of people who I would say on the extreme end, you have C-suite executives who are essentially mandating that people use these AI tools. Now, it is a bit painful at first, but these teams are the fastest adopters. They're seeing the biggest ROI by far. And now it becomes a thing where they hire net new people who that is day one, they're trained on these tools. That is their new process. And I would say that is the most effective way for teams to do this. Other teams, I would say on the other end, are doing much more of a bottoms up approach where they're letting individual people adopt or not adopt. And they're typically within organizations, a few people who are going to be your savvy power users of some of these tools who also are comfortable changing behavior, getting rid of their 5 different tools to adopt one or, whatever that workflow shift is. And then you have people who aren't. And the challenge with that is you still have organizations where everyone is not speaking the same language. Everyone is not adopting similar processes, and you still have some of these silos. So what I'm seeing now, and I think if you ask me this question in 5 years, you'll get a very different answer. I think right now it still has to be a little bit of a top-down decision and then a top-down mandate of we're going to, we've had many customers replace 3 to 4 tools with Tofu. Now, when they do that, those other tools go away, right? So they kind of have no choice. But they're also saying we are going to be an AI forward team. We are going to simplify our workflows. We are going to be cohesive. We're going to all be on brand, on a similar message, and we're going to be coordinated. And I think when leaders take a strong stance on that, it has very powerful impacts on the team. When leaders don't, or when they're fearful, or when they let members of their team either opt out or be afraid, then I feel like things go awry. What's interesting on that front too, there are certain roles where AI feels like a magic wand and it's just helping them as a force multiplier. And then there are roles where it feels very threatening. And I think that's also a bit on leadership. And, your audience tends to be CMOs and leaders. It's a bit on their shoulders to also calm those fears and empower those users to make sure that they're elevated. So I'll give you a real example here. Content marketers, copywriters feel very threatened right now. It feels like what AI is doing really well, or where people are adopting it as the lowest hanging fruit, is to write stuff. That is their core job. Now, how I've seen teams elevate these people and really empower them is you're not just a copywriter anymore. You're a content strategist. You are actually up-leveled. You get to take on more of the strategy, which is always the up-leveled position, as opposed to write me a blog post, create 6 social posts, write a press release. Now you can go and say, what should our strategy be? Okay, we're going to go and do this financial services campaign. What is the core messaging that we want to get across? I can help outline, I can help guide, I can help bullet point, but let AI do the heavy lifting of saying, great, now we have to go and create 8 different assets based off of this strategy. And I think when people feel that they're now being lifted up, they can own that. And now they get excited to use AI as opposed to threatened.
Yeah, I do think actually, I think there's still some fear, but I think I've started to get a sense that we're kind of, because with any technological kind of shift, big one, and this is the big one now, isn't it? I mean, I think we're sort of realizing that this is probably the big shift. The biggest shift maybe actually since the internet. I mean, I would go that far. That's how monumental this is. And so in terms of being so far reaching, changing the way that we live, I think with anything like that, there's always fear, isn't there, at the beginning? Yeah. Always, with everything. If you look at the telephone, there was fear. Have you it's just literally, it's human. It's like you were saying about human nature. It's just human nature to resist change. We are creatures of habit. We want to stick with what we know because the unknown is scary and there's potentially risks there. But yeah, I think I agree with you. That culture change really comes from the top. doesn't it? It really comes from the leaders at the top who say, look, no, this is how it's going to help you. I was speaking to somebody the other day, actually, another CMO, who said that she's actually had like workshops. She's had like gamified workshops within her organization to like kind of like let her team have fun with it, almost, which I just thought was so lovely. It's like what a great practical way to get people past the fear, to say like, not like this is something you can have fun with. This is something that like you're in control of more than anything else. You can make it do what you want it to do. I just think that's wonderful. I think I would say as well, like, maybe that top-down approach can come from things like that, saying like, let's try it out together. Let's have a workshop. Let's throw ideas back and forth. And then by the end of the day, it doesn't seem as scary anymore, does it? Because it's kind of like we've used it and we know what it can do. Yeah.
I love that approach of making it fun, because I think that even very smart, very educated, tech savvy people still have some fear when it comes to anything. And it's almost embarrassment of not knowing how to do it right, or feeling like they don't know what to do. But everyone is in the same boat. This is new for everyone. I like the idea of play and making it fun, even potentially. Today in the US is Valentine's Day. You could have like a fun thing where let's see who can come up with the craziest Valentine's Day campaign, and let's all go and sit in a room and, do something fun like that. I think things like that will help bring the team together and also really unify people and get over that fear. The other thing that I've seen is there are now folks, and I know some of them who I think are wonderful, who have now made it a career to come into some of these larger organizations and do these facilitated workshops where they give people tips, tricks, best practices, ways of thinking about it. One of my favorite tips that sometimes they'll tell you is ask the AI to ask you questions. It solidifies and clarifies your own thinking, and it really helps get the output better. I think where people fall down often is that when the output, humans think that AI can read their mind, which is fascinating to watch. They think that is pure black magic, and it is literally just reading your mind. It is not. I can confirm it is not. However, one way to get over that hurdle is to have it ask you questions, because then you realize all of the holes in your prompting if you're using a chat interface. Now, a lot of applications are trying to obfuscate a lot of that need, which I think is helpful. But to the extent that you're using this as a thought partner, as a brainstorming partner, as an editor, have it ask you questions first, because the outputs are going to be so much better at the end.
I can see how like older people, younger people even maybe think it's demonic or something, but it's not. Like it's part of the process. It's interpreting information that I'm giving it all the time, isn't it? And sort of looking at certain cultural signals and certain things, I guess, that indicate what my intention is and what I want, and then that tells it something about me. But it was just a moment where I was like, God, this is a powerful tool. Like, it's scary.
Well, it's even fun. So I have a toddler. I have a 3.5-year-old, and we use the voice mode all the time. And I've given it information that this is a 3.5-year-old girl, and she'll have a conversation with it, but it knows how to change it to being very age appropriate for her. And talking about Disney princesses and things like that. But it's powerful in terms of usage, both at work and in personal life.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think all of these things can help to demystify it. Okay, so let's move on to what I wanted to talk about next then, the phase 2. So I wanted to talk about personalization a little bit with you. Now, everyone, you actually hit on this already, and I think it's this, it's a good way to sort of segue into it. So, everyone's kind of talking about like hyper personalization. Personalization has become such a kind of buzzword, but where do people often go kind of wrong with this? You've actually mentioned this already, so maybe you can just kind of elaborate on this a little bit. What are some of like what everyone knows it's important, but why is it something that people get wrong so often still?
It comes back to being thoughtful. And it comes back to being intentional as opposed to using it as a blunt instrument. Where people go wrong is, okay, I now have the ability to spin up 50 domains that are pre-warmed and go and blast out emails to 30,000 people. And we're going to personalize them. That is AI gone wrong. That is personalization gone wrong. Here are some great examples of where personalization can be thoughtful and move the needle substantially. Nurture programs across all areas of segmentation and behavior-based nurture. Somebody comes to your site, they download a white paper, which was gated on your website. That's showing intent, but they have not requested a demo. They're probably not ready to talk to sales. What you should be doing is putting them into a nurture program. Now, maybe this white paper was on some like esoteric financial topic, and another white paper is on something more security related. The people who download those two different white papers should not be given the same nurture sequence. Yet today, they almost always are. Now, how do you be thoughtful about it? You take in the context of who is this person? What is their title? What company are they at? What industry? What size? What geo? All of that kind of stuff. What have they done with your company historically? Is this the first piece of content they've downloaded? Have they downloaded 3 pieces of content before? Now I can take all of this information, public data, private data sitting in your CRM, combine them together to create something that is unique to them. What is the next best action for this person? Maybe this was the first piece of content that they downloaded, but it was on topic X and their company is related to maybe their company's cybersecurity. So I have a case study that's cybersecurity that's related to topic X. That should probably be the next piece of content I guide them towards. So that is perfect personalization, right? It is saying, I understand your interest and your intent. I know your category. I know your role. Let me go and guide you down this path. That's good. Like that is personalization done well. Similarly, with our customers, a lot of people will, let's say we're doing a webinar or an event. I can personalize the invitation to you. I can personalize the registration page to you. I can try to make it more contextual as opposed to extremely generic. Maybe I also want to go and take some content and verticalize it because, hey, if somebody's in healthcare and somebody else is in construction, the language they use is wildly different. The things they care about are wildly different. Now, maybe the subject matter is similar of like, how do you deal with changing financial regulations in 2025? That could apply to both construction and to healthcare. However, you probably want to have very different content. So being able to verticalize content is also a very thoughtful way of personalizing. So those are just some examples of how I think about what is thoughtful versus what is not.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. Like, so let's go into then, we've talked a lot about technology and how do you see, you've touched on this a little bit, I think, but like with AI specifically, because it feels like with every podcast conversation, AI just bleeds in, doesn't it? It's like you can't avoid it. You just can't. You can't. Like I was saying, it's the biggest thing, right? So, how is AI going to play a part in this? Because obviously, there's been a lot of instances, like you mentioned before, where it's got it very, very, very wrong. But how can we thoughtfully use AI technology to help us with personalization? What is like the best case scenario where we use AI to really boost our personalization strategy?
Yeah, I think that example I gave before on the nurture is exactly where AI would come into play. Now, AI can go and research the person that just downloaded this white paper. It can go and pull data that's sitting in my CRM, marketing automation system, data warehouse, private data. It can then go and say, here are the assets that you already have in your resource center. Let me go and pull in those to craft a nurture sequence that's going to be next best action for that person. That is something that would take impossible for a human. Never, ever possible. AI can do this at scale. So now let's say you're getting 10 people a day that are downloading white papers, 100 people a day. It can go and scale that and create that one-to-one experience. Similarly, mentioned before, repurposing content. So having the humans as that creative strategist, creating the what we call kind of like meaty anchor pieces of content, the long form assets. Now go and take that webinar recording, take that ebook, take that research report, turn that into content across all of your channels because your audience lives in many places. Just focusing on one area, you're not going to go and address the whatever percentage of people that are in market. One of our customers used this term that I love. He said, we're trying to envelop our audience in our brand, which means you have to be everywhere. You have to be in the physical world, across the digital channels with consistent messaging and really leverage the stuff that your team is doing to be in all of those places. Now, that's another way that AI is really, really good of, kind of popping that stuff in. And then I think the last piece that we already touched on as well is around that really putting the user at the center and thinking through what is their experience going to look like? And how can I go and create a consistent, unified experience for them? AI is good at creating that consistency, that cohesive messaging, because it can understand your brand. It can understand your templates, meaning what does a blog post look like for us? How do we structure it? What is the length? What is the tone? And now it can go and kind of create, using your own templates, your own brand, your own style, it can go and create those unified experiences for your users.
Yeah, I love that. I love being able to use the kind of because I think, that's the thing often with brand is that you talk about enveloping with your brand. That is all about consistency and being kind of consistent about what your image is and what you mean to people. And I think I love that idea of utilizing, how much more ubiquitous and far-reaching AI can be than we can be. It is the obvious answer, isn't it? Really, for how it can assist with things like brand and making up the brand appealing, that the personalization that goes alongside that. Yeah, I think that's a great example. Definitely. Yeah, superb. Yeah, great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit then about, let's go back to integration. So marketers, I think that, again, this is an old idea, the idea of integrated campaigns. But in practice, it doesn't always turn out that way, obviously, and it's not always something that we, so I just want to hear, what does it actually mean to you and what does it look like really? What is an integrated campaign? If you could sum it up in a holistic way, how would you describe it?
An integrated campaign to me means taking the different people that make up your marketing org. That could be your demand gen team, your content team, your SDR, BDR team if they sit under marketing, which I think they should, your digital team, your web team. All of those people are focused on a campaign. And I think marketing likes to use the term campaign. But to me, a campaign is a concrete set of who are we targeting, with what message, on which channels, and why. Okay, now that could be anything from the nurture example as I gave before, the insight that one of our customers had that financial services was 3x ACVs. Great, let's use that as our example. So we want to go and create a unified campaign targeting financial services. We're going to work with sales to understand which type of accounts are the best accounts. Demand gen is going to go and figure out which of these different channels do financial services people resonate with. Content is going to go and fuel the entire campaign by going and creating the assets that are going to live within all of those pieces. The digital team is going to go and create very specific ads focused on the unique pain points of financial services just for those accounts that sales has picked, right? We're starting to get this really cohesive experience where your content's focused on the industry. The people you're choosing are the ones that are specifically focused on the unique insight that you had. And now your entire team is coordinated. I think that coordination is hard. People are hard. I think the harder piece, though, is that to fuel any kind of integrated campaign, the literal fuel is content. Content is everything. Content is your landing page experience. It is your emails that you're sending out. It is the content like white papers, ebooks, case studies. It is the webinars. It is all the event collateral. It is literally everything. And that needs to be unified and cohesive. And today, that tends to come from individual channels as opposed to a single unified place. And I think if you can start taking that fuel and creating it in a unified place and then letting each channel manager go and execute and use their strategic mind to go and do what they do best, now you have a true integrated campaign that is singing the same tune and really making that experience for the user one that's beautiful as opposed to one that feels disjointed.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess it all starts, doesn't it? The whole thing, I think, before you get to any of this and before you get is having that kind of vision that everyone is behind. And I sometimes wonder if companies struggle with even getting that right. Even if maybe you've got an organization where people know what you're about and who you're trying to appeal to, but implementing it is difficult. But I sometimes feel like maybe the problem goes even further back than that. Like if you actually ask people what are we about, maybe even what does our product do?
Yes.
I wonder sometimes if people will struggle, and I wonder how do you go about that? How even from the beginning, making sure that, you're running a ship where kind of everyone kind of understands the kind of the core mission and like what you're all about. Like how do you go about that? Does that start in the hiring process? Does that start, take me through what your experience with this?
Oh, I love this question. So I'll skip through the hiring piece because I think I'm less qualified to talk through that. But one of the things that also is such an amazing use of AI is everyone should sit on sales calls. And what I mean by that is in customer success calls, AI can take call recordings and pull out insights super well. We can go on a weekly basis. We actually do a process on our team where every single week we pick a call that was a customer success call that went not well. We typically pick one that was hard and we watch it as a team and we dissect it. What was wrong with the product? What was the customer saying? What language were they using? Who was this person? Is this the right user for us? Having everyone come together to hear the voice of the customer repeatedly is the single most important thing to identify, are you building the right thing? Is your messaging and positioning correct? Are you targeting the right users? So there's two ways to go about this. There's doing what we do, where you can bring people synchronously to actually listen and watch, as painful as that might be. The second way, which is 100% an easy best practice, is every call is recorded now. Take your Gong, your Sybil, your Fathom, your Otter recordings, dump them in. Maybe it's by sector. Maybe it's, hey, here are our healthcare calls from the last 2 weeks. Dump them in and have AI distill out the best insights from it. What is the repeated pain points? What is the language? What are the biggest objections? All of those things are going to give teams such amazing insights, but also unify everybody. Now we're all hearing the same information. The sales team, the customer success team, the marketing team, the entire go-to-market team is now on the same page. And it also makes you really align on the customer. What are they saying? What are their pain points? What are we not doing well today? What are we doing fantastically well today? I think that is the single biggest way to really make sure that everyone is both aligned, that you feel like you're moving in the right direction from a product perspective and from a go-to-market perspective.
So let's round it off then and say, if people, if people are looking to find out more from you, if there's anything like, if they want more advice on this kind of topic, if they want to reach out to you, where should they go?
Well, our website is TofuHQ.com. I'm Elaine at TofuHQ.com. I also teach courses across a lot of different CMO communities and schools around where and how to apply generative AI to go-to-market workflows. If your organization would be interested, I do this for free. It is not a tofu pitch. It is very much a tactical, practical way to learn how your teams can adopt it today, and also where you should not be focused today, meaning the technology is not ready for prime time yet. Happy to do it for your organization. So looking forward to chatting with anybody.
That's great. I'm sure people are going to want to, after hearing this, I think, you come with some great insight today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of CMO Convo. For more content like this, check the recommended videos on your screen now. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a thing.